For so many people, the startup dream is all about getting in on the ground floor and earning wealth through stock options. But at the Indian edtech giant Unacademy, that dream has twisted into a complete financial nightmare. We're talking about hundreds of former employees, people who were promised a piece of the pie, now facing a crisis that could literally cost them everything. So let me just ask you this right off the bat. Imagine you had to make a choice. Pay a fortune, say 30 lakh rupees in cold, hard cash, for something that might be worth absolutely zero tomorrow. It sounds insane, right? Well, that's the impossible, gut-wrenching dilemma facing the very people who helped build Unacademy. And why? What happened? Well, this happened. Unacademy's valuation has just fallen off a cliff. We're talking a 90% drop. It went from a peak of $3.4 billion down to a potential fire sale price of just $300 million. And it's this catastrophic collapse that's lit the fuse on this whole crisis. So let's break down exactly how this went so wrong. The whole thing really kicked off when Unacademy suddenly, and I mean overnight, changed the rules for its employee stock options, or ESOPs as they're known. You see, for years, the deal was simple. If you left the company, you had a full decade, 10 years, to decide if you wanted to buy your shares. It was a comfortable, low-risk perk. But then, poof, that 10-year window was slammed shut and replaced with a terrifying 30-day ultimatum. The message was crystal clear. Pay up right now or watch years of your hard-earned equity just disappear forever. Now, this is where it gets really interesting and really, really messy. People started calling this a scam, a tax trap. And that's because it's not just about finding the money to buy the shares. Oh no, it's about a nasty little surprise that's buried deep in Indian tax law. Anyone who actually tries to exercise their options gets hit with not one, but two huge costs at the exact same time. It's this devastating financial 1-2 punch that's knocking people out. Okay, so here's how it works. First, you have to pay Unacademy for the shares themselves. Simple enough. But then comes the killer's second step. You also have to immediately pay a massive tax bill to the government. And this is a tax on a paper gain that you haven't actually earned yet. It's not real money in your pocket. Let's put some real numbers on this to see how crazy it is. For a senior employee, a theoretical paper gain of 90 lakh rupees could mean they have to suddenly come up with 30 lakh rupees. We're talking about 36,000 US dollars in actual cash to pay the tax man. And they have to find that money within that tiny 30-day window. And this all comes down to a specific law called a perquisite tax. What it means in simple terms is that the government sees the potential profit as salary and taxes you on it the second you buy the shares. It doesn't matter that you haven't sold them. It doesn't matter if you've made a single rupee of actual money yet. You owe the tax now. All right, so that's one side of it. Now let's switch gears and look at the founder's defense. Unacademy CEO Gaurav Munjal, he's arguing that, look, this isn't a trap at all. He says it's actually a last-ditch effort to save employees from walking away with absolutely nothing. So Munjal's argument basically has three parts. First, he says in the upcoming merger, only people who own actual shares will get shares in the new company. Option holders, you're left out in the cold. Second, and this is the really critical part, he claims that investors have legal rights that would just wipe out all unexercised options anyway. So he's saying it's this or zero. And finally, he points out that his own fortune is tied up in the exact same way. But to really, truly understand Munjal's point, you have to look at the cold, hard, brutal math of what happens when the high-flying startup suddenly comes crashing back down to earth. Here it is, the problem in a nutshell. Unacademy raised over $800 million from investors, but now the whole company is being sold for only about $300 million. That means they're selling for less than half of the money that was put into it. That's a huge problem. And this is where a really important venture capital term comes into play, liquidation preference. Think of it like a VIP line at a club. It's a legal clause that says, when the company is sold, investors get their money back first. It puts them at the absolute front of the line for any payout. So when Unacademy sells for $300 million, that money isn't just split up evenly among everyone. Nope, because investors are owed over $800 million. They have the legal right to take the entire $300 million sale price for themselves. So what's left for the common shareholders? The employees who just maybe paid a massive tax bill to buy their stock? Well, potentially a big fat zero. Nothing. And this is the core of Munjal's argument. He's saying, convert your options now and pray for a share swap in the new company. Because if you wait, you are guaranteed to get nothing. So let's just imagine for a second, what if that original 10-year policy was still in place? How different would the outcome be for all of these former employees right now? Well, the difference is just staggering. With that old 10-year window, the risk was almost non-existent for the employee. You could just sit back and wait. If the company soared, great. If it tanked and the shares became worthless, well, you didn't lose a single rupee out of your own pocket. But this new policy, it completely flips the script and dumps all of that risk squarely onto the employee's shoulders.
And that brings us to the counter-argument, the cynical view from critics and ex-employees. They believe the founder's defense doesn't really tell the whole story. They think this move was less about protecting employees and a lot more about corporate strategy.
I mean, think about it from a purely business standpoint. Forcing this choice has some huge benefits for Unacademy's founders as they try to sell the company. They know most employees can't afford the tax bill, so their options will just expire. This cleans the cap table, making the company a much tidier, more attractive thing for a buyer to acquire. Ultimately, what's happened at Unacademy is a huge cautionary tale, and it goes way beyond just one company. This is a stark, flashing warning sign about the true nature of paper wealth in the startup world. When you boil it all down, this is what happened. By forcing this 30-day decision, the founders effectively took the financial risk of their own company's failure and transferred it from their corporate balance sheet directly into the personal bank accounts of the people who used to work for them. And all of this leaves us with one final, pretty sobering question. ESOPs are always sold as this golden ticket, right? The reward for taking a risk on a new company. But if that paper wealth can suddenly turn around and demand a fortune in real cash just to keep it from vanishing, is the entire startup dream built on a foundation of risk that most people simply can't afford to take?